At 57, Keith Urban has finally broken his silence about one of the most talked about chapters of his life, his marriage to Nicole Kidman. For years, we all watched, fans speculated, and the media spun endless stories, but now, after nearly 2 decades of love, fame, and heartbreak, the country superstar is telling his side of the story raw, honest, and completely unfiltered. It's almost impossible to picture Keith Urban without Nicole Kidman. For so long, they were the very definition of a Hollywood power couple, two massive stars who seemed to balance global fame and family with effortless grace. From every red carpet appearance to those heartwarming interviews, they just looked unshakable. But behind those picture-perfect smiles were silent struggles, hidden resentments, and emotional walls that no amount of fame could break down. When Keith met Nicole back in 2005, it wasn't just a spark, it was an absolute wildfire. Nicole was fresh off one of Hollywood's most public divorces from Tom Cruise, while Keith was at the peak of his music career. He was the rugged country star with deep Southern roots. She was the elegant Oscar-winning actress with a global presence. On paper, they couldn't have been more different. But maybe that's exactly what drew them together. Keith has described their first meeting as instant chemistry, and Nicole once said in an interview that she felt something truly unexplainable that night. He was gentle, quiet, and kind, she remembered, but there was a depth to him I hadn't seen in anyone before. They fell in love fast, maybe even too fast, maybe do fast and six. They were married in a breathtaking ceremony in Sydney, Australia. For a little while, everything really did look like a fairy tale. Nicole would gush about her husband's music, and Keith would praise her incredible strength and grace. But beneath all that glamour, a much darker reality was starting to creep in. Keith's struggles with addiction weren't a secret, but they became harder to hide as the intense pressures of fame and a new marriage collided. Just a few months after their wedding, Keith checked himself into rehab. For Nicole, it was a devastating blow. She had dreamed of a new beginning, a love that would finally heal old wounds. Instead, she found herself fighting for a man who was battling demons she couldn't always reach. Years later, Keith would admit that Nicole's decision to stand by him during that dark time literally saved his life. "She's the one who saved me," he said. "She could have walked away, but she didn't. She gave me a chance to get better. But even a love that powerful has its limits." The hard truth Keith is now admitting is that his addiction wasn't the only reason their marriage started to fall apart. Fame, distance, and completely different priorities began to slowly chip away at the foundation they had built. Nicole's career required her to travel constantly, often spending months at a time filming abroad. Keith's life was also on the road, touring, performing, and recording. They were two people deeply in love, yet they were rarely ever together. He revealed that there were years when they lived more like visiting strangers than a married couple. He confessed, "We were trying, but the world we lived in kept pulling us in opposite directions." Nicole, for her part, had always been vocal about wanting a strong, stable family life. She loved being a mother to their two daughters, Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret, and craved stability. But the constant whirlwind of celebrity life made that nearly impossible. "We'd make promises to spend more time together," Keith said, "but the business doesn't wait. The phone keeps ringing, the lights keep shining, and before you know it, we're living separate lives." Keith admitted that communication became their single biggest challenge. "We stopped talking about the hard things," he confessed. "We smiled for the cameras, held hands for the world, but behind closed doors, we were struggling to even understand each other." Nicole, ever the professional, did her best to keep their private struggles out of the tabloids. But eventually, rumors of tension started to surface. Some whispered that Keith felt overshadowed by Nicole's fame, while others claimed she had grown tired of his constant touring. For years, neither of them ever addressed the speculation directly. But now, Keith admits there was some truth to those whispers. Nicole was at a place in her life where she wanted peace, grounding, he explained. "I was still chasing something, chasing success, validation, maybe even escape. I didn't know how to just be still, and that drove a wedge between us." He went on to describe how fame twisted their reality. "When you're in love and the world keeps watching, you start performing the relationship instead of living it. That's what happened to us. We were always on display. We forgot to nurture what was real. There were also deeper emotional wounds, things both of them carried from their pasts." Nicole had already been through one intensely public marriage and was gutted about showing her vulnerability. Keith, on the other hand, had grown up around emotional distance and addiction, which shaped how he handled conflict. "I didn't always know how to express pain without shutting down," he said, "and she needed someone who could open up. I just wasn't that man back then." After years of trying everything, counseling, long talks, private getaways, they finally reached a breaking point. According to sources close to them, the separation wasn't explosive or bitter. It was quiet and almost heartbreaking in its calmness. They had loved each other deeply, but they realized that love alone wasn't enough to keep them together. Keith now admits that letting go was one of the hardest decisions of his entire life. "I didn't stop loving her," he said, "but I had to accept that sometimes love changes form. It doesn't disappear, it just stops fitting into the life you've built." He reflected on how their relationship truly shaped him. "Nicole taught me what it means to fight for someone. She showed me grace. She showed me patience. And when it ended, she showed me how to walk away with dignity." Despite everything, Keith speaks with nothing but the deepest respect for his ex-wife. "She's an incredible woman," he said. "She gave me a family, she gave me faith in love again. And even though we didn't make it as husband and wife, I'll always be grateful." Friends close to Keith say he's in a much more peaceful place now. He's been focusing on his music, his sobriety, and rediscovering who he is outside of the spotlight. "It's strange," he reflected, "when you strip everything away, the awards, the shows, the headlines, you're left with the person you've been avoiding. That's when the real work begins." As for Nicole, she's continued to flourish in her career and personal life, always handling the media with her signature poise. Those who know her say she still speaks kindly of Keith and that they maintain a mutual respect, especially for their daughters. Keith recently hinted that some of his new songs are inspired by the end of their marriage. "Music has always been how I process pain," he said. "Some people talk it out. I write it out. That's how I heal." When asked if he would ever consider getting back together, Keith paused before answering, "I think we both found peace in different ways," he said. "Sometimes love stories don't have a traditional ending. Sometimes the ending is learning to let go with love still in your heart." It is so rare to see this kind of honesty from someone who has lived under a microscope for most of his life. But Keith Urban's openness about his marriage reminds us all that behind the fame and fortune, there are still human hearts, fragile, flawed, and just trying to find meaning. He concluded his reflection with a quiet truth that really hit home. People think marriage ends because of one big thing-an affair, a fight, a betrayal. But most of the time, it's 1,000 little moments when you stop showing up. That's what happened to us. And I'll carry that lesson with me forever. Today, Keith stands as a man who has lived, loved, fallen, and learned. His journey isn't about regret, about growth. "If I could go back," he said, "I wouldn't change loving her, because every song, every heartbreak, every lesson all came from that love." In a world obsessed with drama, Keith's quiet honesty cuts right through the noise. He doesn't blame Nicole. He doesn't play the victim. He simply owns his part, honors what they had, and moves forward. And maybe that's the real message here, not that love fails, but that sometimes it just evolves. At 57, Keith Urban finally admits why his marriage to Nicole Kidman ended not because of some big scandal, but because two people who once saved each other eventually needed to save themselves. And that's not a tragedy. That's just life. Thank you so much for watching. What do you think about Keith's honest reflection? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories like this. See you next time.